In this video, I'm going to show you the top 5 most common questions that get asked in Waitrose interviews. I'm going to help you plan out some really great answers that will maximize your chances of getting a job working in Waitrose. So let's look at the first question, probably the most important question in your whole interview, and that is, what is your availability for shifts at Waitrose? They're going to be super interested in knowing what times you can actually work. And if your answer doesn't match up with what they're looking for in the times they need people, then your chance of getting the job is going to be much, much lower. So let's look at the key things you need to get in the answer to be successful. The first thing you want to do is try and be as flexible as possible. The more flexibility that you can show, the more chance you have of actually getting the job. The next thing you want to do is try and be as open-minded as possible. Don't close yourself off to lots of times and shut down any conversations about times that may not be perfect for you. You want to be as open-minded as possible. Fundamentally, the more often you say yes, the better your chance of getting the job. Because if you say no to a specific time that they are interested in, and you're saying, no, I'm not going to work the times that you actually need someone, then they're probably going to employ someone else rather than you, because the whole point of employing someone is to staff the times that they need. And the other thing you want to worry about is showing commitment. The way that people do really badly on this question is they list all of the times that they can't work or all the times they prefer not to work and forget to spend most of the time talking about all the times that they can work. It wants to be positive. You want to be showing lots of availability and lots of flexibility and not shutting down and saying lots of times that you can't work. The other thing you can do is think about how to frame and how to basically say a really good answer. So some of the best answers have various components. You could say something like, I'm happy to work to meet the business's needs. So you can work when you're required. I'm able to work the advertised time. So if the job advert that you're applying to had a suggested work pattern or had specific times, just say that you're happy to work those times, because they put the job advert out because they wanted people at that time. So be very clear that you're happy to work those times. If you're open to overtime, mention that. Waitrose may or may not offer you overtime, but it doesn't do any harm to say that you're open to it, because you will get paid more if you do it. See, you can also say that you can usually work at short notice if needed. That's just showing some sort of initiative, some usefulness, and some flexibility as well. You could say, I'm always happy to help out when needed. So even if it's not your normal working pattern, if they're short of staff, you may be the person they can go to jump in. And of course, you get paid for those extra hours. You could also say a really, really general one, which is, I should be able to ensure I can work throughout the full range of opening hours. So if you're super flexible and you can work anytime, use the bottom answer, and that could be a really strong answer to this question. So let's move on to another extremely important question, which is, what do you know about Waitrose? Now, if you get to this question in an interview and you haven't actually done your research, and you don't really know much about Waitrose, or you don't know any more than any normal person who lives in the UK would actually know, then your interview is going to go massively downhill. You must have done your research, otherwise you look unprepared and you don't look very credible. So let's look at how you answer this question. And I'm also going to share with you key facts that you can take to your interview to show that you've got good fundamental knowledge. So when you're preparing for this question, you start by looking at the middle of that diagram. So you start with the obvious facts. What are the things that everybody knows about Waitrose? Say those things to show you know the basics. Then show some facts that are actually pretty decent facts to show that you've actually done some research. And then drop in a few really great facts, maybe even things that the person hiring you doesn't even know about the company, to show that you've done really great research. And I'm going to give you lots of tips of how you can do that. So the first thing you do when you ask this question is you say something very obvious. It's a supermarket chain. That is what the business is based around. Then you go and you say where its market positioning is. So Waitrose is towards the upper end of the supermarket's price range and quality range. They're around about where Marks and Spencer's are. They're catering to consumers that are looking for very high quality products. So that's what you also say. They're part of the John Lewis partnership. So you got John Lewis, the department stores, and Waitrose, they're all the same business. They are really different in that it's an employee ownership. So they refer to it as a partnership. And when you are taking a job at Waitrose, you're becoming a business partner. You actually end up being part of an employee benefit trust where they basically divide up the profits with all of the employees. So you will receive a bonus, based on how much the business makes. So if the business is really successful, you could get quite a large top up to your pay as being a partner in the business. So the company is owned by the employees that work there. And that might be a really important reason for why you want to work here. It was founded all the way back in 1904, and it was founded by Waitrose and Taylor. And of course, Mr. Taylor left the business quite early, and then they put Wait and Rose together, changed spelling a little bit, and they now get Waitrose. That's where the name comes from. They donate a part of their profits and income to charity, and they're very proud of that. They have a royal warrant from the Queen and also Prince Charles, so they supply groceries to the royal household, and that's something they're also quite proud of. You've got Little Waitrose, that's another part of the business, that's the convenience side, so that's smaller supermarkets serving the convenience market with high quality products. They currently have a loyalty scheme called My Waitrose. You want to check out what the loyalty scheme on offer is now. It may have changed since this video was made, but currently it's My Waitrose, and make sure you know how that works and can talk about that in your interview. They have click and collect services where you can, instead of ordering online and getting delivered, you can have it delivered to the store, or you can have it delivered to your home. You've got Waitrose.com, which facilitates the online shopping experience. And they're also quite proud of the fact that they set high ethical standards. So things like free trade, sustainability, climate change prevention, so reducing the carbon impact of their products. Those sort of things are very high on the agenda at Waitrose, and they pride themselves on that. Another top tip that I would give you is take the time to read the John Lewis Partnership annual report and focus on the Waitrose sections. And that will show that you've done great research. You'll find fantastic facts in those reports, and also mention in your interview that going to read that report is something that you did. And that will really impress them. So make sure you've done your research, use these facts. Feel free to screenshot this page so that you've got all of the facts that you can start talking about in your interview. And now we can move on to the next question, which is, why do you want to work for Waitrose? So now that we've got the key knowledge out of the way, let's move on and look at some other questions that they might ask you. So one question that's obviously very likely to come up and comes up all the time in Waitrose interviews is, why do you want to work for Waitrose? And if you don't have a good answer planned, it doesn't look very good. So this is one that I definitely recommend you actually write down before your interview, because it's so likely to come up and it's so important to getting the job. So let's look at the things that you need to get in that answer that you plan. So the first one is to think about, why would you enjoy working at Waitrose? What are you going to like about the job? Because if you're going to like your job and enjoy it, you're probably going to be better at it. And it explains why you want to work here. So do you enjoy working in customer service? Have you had jobs working in grocery stores before or similar businesses and you've enjoyed doing that? Do you enjoy meeting new people, interacting with the public? Is this something that interests you? And if it does, talk about that. So think about all the things you'd like and be really enthusiastic and passionate about those areas. Think about why it's a good match for your skills. Are you someone that is really good at customer service? Are you really good at dealing with people? Do you form good relationships with people? Are you good at working in a team? Are you very patient? Have you got very high standards when you're, for example, stacking shelves? Are you going to get that very neat, tidy? Is this all these sort of skills that you have would be really good for that job? And you can talk about previous experience and why this matches with your skills. Then you think about if it matches with your career plan. So if you're brand new to work, think about all the things you're going to learn and how you're going to develop when you join the company. If you're applying for a job that is a promotion, you're moving from one company to another for a better job, you could talk about how this job matches with your career plan and how it's helping you move in the right direction. You might want to think about, why is Waitrose better than other supermarkets? One of the key things is that you're joining a partnership rather than just being an hourly paid employee, that you're actually being a bigger and more important part of the business, and you're actually being rewarded and being taken into a partnership. And whatever you do, make sure you're being really enthusiastic in your answer. Because if you're enthusiastic in your answer, you're going to be taken more seriously. And when you're saying, I really want to work here, with no enthusiasm, that isn't going to go down very well. So some ideas of things you could talk about is, if you see this as a long-term career, definitely say so. If you want to be working in grocery retail for a while, you want to be working your way up the ranks of the company, definitely mention that. If you enjoy working in retail, be very clear that this is something you enjoy doing. If you know someone who works for Waitrose, you don't have to name them, but what you can say is that you know people that work at Waitrose and talk about their positive experiences and sharing their enthusiasm for working there. If you really love the idea of it being under employee ownership, say so. And say that the partnership is one reason that's really interested you. And you may actually also say that the salary and the benefits are highly competitive because Waitrose typically pays slightly better than other supermarkets, especially because of the partnership aspect. And you can say that Waitrose has a highly competitive offering to attract good people to work there. And you may want to also mention that towards the end of your answer. So I would definitely write out an answer. Feel free to pause or screenshot this so you can write a really good answer. And then now let's move on to another question that's important to prepare for. Sometimes near the beginning of the interview, they'll simply say, "Can you tell me more about yourself?" And can be a wasted opportunity. You want to actually plan this out to make sure that you know how to introduce yourself and how to talk about all the key skills that you have and what you should be saying. So let's plan it around three main things. So your experience, your personal qualities that they're going to care about, and then explaining your interest in the role towards the end of your answer. So for experience, think about all your jobs. And you're going to say all the jobs that you've had, but you're going to focus more on the ones that are important. So think about the customer service jobs, the ones where you've worked with the public. So if you've worked in a restaurant, if you've worked, that's front of house. If you've worked in a supermarket, you worked in a retailer, you worked in a call center, anywhere where you're dealing with lots of people on a daily basis, that's the best experience for a store role at Waitrose. Or if you're applying for a different role, you can focus on the more relevant aspects of that experience. Then if you've got any qualifications, you could talk about the qualifications that you have, just list them and explain why they're relevant to the job. Your qualities, so highly reliable, super important. You're professional and you work well in a team. These are the three main qualities that I would talk about. If you've got other qualities that's really great about you, also mention those. Then think about your interest in the role. You may say that you're fascinated by the partnership model, make it really particular to Waitrose. You may talk about that you're looking to gain and develop skills and you think Waitrose is a really great place to support your development, especially if you're early in your career or you're taking a step up in your career. And then definitely make a point of emphasizing that you enjoy this sort of work. And that's why you're applying for this role. So that is how you plan the tell me more about yourself question. And don't waste this opportunity. Definitely have a simple answer ready, planned around these aspects. So let's move on and look at question number 5, which is tell me about a time you showed leadership. And they do ask several tell me about a time or tell me about an example where you did this. And I'm going to show you how you can plan these questions. Leadership is one that I've seen come up in Waitrose interviews more often than other ones. So I'm going to show you all the different ones that you want to think about planning to be really well prepared. So thinking of an example of the time where you've showed leadership isn't really easy. And it's one of these when you go into the interview and they say, tell me about a time that you did this. And you go, I can't remember a time. I can't think of any time. I've never done this in my entire life ever. And in an interview, you tend to have like 5 seconds to suddenly think up an example. And it's really difficult. So go with prepared examples. It'll make your life so much easier. So some places you might find these is volunteering. Have you done any volunteering roles that involve leadership? Have you had any previous jobs where you did anything where you're leading something or took ownership of something? Have you been involved in sports where you led a team? Have you been involved in college or university societies where you were leading something, organizing something? Have you fixed a mistake that you saw something that was wrong, you jumped in and fixed it, and that was your example of leadership? You solved a problem, found something that was wrong, and did something to improve something. That's leadership. And it could be something really simple. You spotted something that wasn't quite right in a store, you highlighted it, and you fixed it. That's leadership. Or if you've led any sort of project that was successful, you could talk about that. And the way that you answer any tell me about a time or give me an example when you, all of those questions, you follow the same technique, and it's called the STAR technique, and it works really well. So let's look at this in the context of leadership. And also think about preparing examples for teamwork, customer service, and helpfulness. And you're going to do the same STAR technique for all of these and have one example ready to go for leadership, teamwork, customer service, helpfulness, and you'll be ready for the most common ones that Waitrose ask. So let's look at the STAR technique. So you start with situation. Then you talk about the task. Then you talk about the actions that you took. and then you talk about the result that you had. So that's where we go star. And so in this case, the situation, when did you need to show leadership? So what was the particular situation? Then task. What did you need to accomplish? So what were you trying to lead? What was the goal? Then action is what did you do to ensure success and how did you lead? So what was the things that you actually did? And then the result, what successful outcome resulted from your leadership? And for the result, it's always got to be something good. So what was the situation? What did you have to do? What actions did you take? And then what was this wonderful, brilliant result that happened because of your leadership? And if you plan it around that, you will do really well. And before we finish, I've got one bonus that's going to be quite useful to you, is questions that you could ask. I'm going to give you some suggestions of some questions you might want to ask at the end of your interview. If it comes to the end of the interview and you say, I don't have any questions, that's really bad. And it could actually cost you the whole job. Shows you're not prepared. So let's help you prepare some example questions that you may choose, or you may want to think up some of your own. So one question you want to think about asking is to ask around what happens next. After this interview, when will I find out? And so you can ask about the next steps. Show that you really care about the next steps, and also it hints the fact that you really do want this job. Then you could ask about the team that you could be working with. Show an interest in your colleagues. You may want to ask them, what's your favorite thing about working at Waitrose? Because in a sense, you're also interviewing them. You're deciding whether, if you're offered a job, do you actually want to work here? And do you want to find out what they like about working here, and then sharing their passion and enthusiasm for that particular thing. So if they say something, you're like, yeah, I would really enjoy that too. That sounds great. And that can help build a kind of bond between you and the interviewer and show that you're similar. The next thing you might want to ask about is, how does the partnership model differentiate Waitrose from other supermarkets? And you can learn about how Waitrose is going to be different from working at, say, Tesco. And you can understand a bit more about the company. And then one of the questions you should make up on the day. So listen to what they're saying. If there's anything that you wonder about during the interview, check it's appropriate in your head, and then maybe ask that at the end to show that you're also listening to what they're saying. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like and subscribe, and put in the comments what questions Waitrose asked in your interviews to help other people get a broader understanding of all of the possible questions. Every interview is different. And finally, thank you very much for watching.